Ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you something. Hmm. When was the last time you said yes when your heart was screaming no? How many times have you smiled when your soul was breaking? How often have you silenced your own voice just to make others comfortable? We live in a world where being nice is often mistaken for being kind, but let me tell you something. Being nice is not kindness. Being nice is a burden we carry to please people who wouldn't even notice if we disappeared. Being nice is sacrificing your truth just to fit into someone else's version of who you should be. So today I stand here to tell you stop being nice. We often confuse being nice with being kind, but the two are fundamentally different. Being nice is about pleasing people, avoiding conflict, and making sure no one feels uncomfortable, even at the cost of your own well being. It is driven by a deep seated need for validation and acceptance. People who are overly nice tend to suppress their own thoughts, feelings, and desires in order to fit into a mold that others expect of them. They avoid saying no because they fear rejection. They remain silent when they should speak up. They agree when they want to disagree. They prioritize the happiness of others while neglecting their own. Kindness, on the other hand, comes from a place of strength. A truly kind person is not afraid to set boundaries, to say no, or to walk away from situations that no longer serve them. Kindness is rooted in self respect, whereas niceness is often rooted in fear. A kind person helps others, but not at the cost of their own dignity. They give, but not to the point where they are left empty. They are compassionate, but not at the expense of their own peace. Being nice is exhausting because it requires constant effort to maintain a certain image. It forces a person to carry the weight of other people's expectations, to always say the right things, and to always be agreeable. It creates an emotional burden that builds up over time, leaving the person feeling drained, frustrated, and often resentful. They may feel invisible, unheard, and unappreciated because they have trained those around them to believe that their needs don't matter. They struggle to voice their concerns because they fear being seen as difficult or uncooperative. The reality is that being nice does not guarantee that people will like you or treat you well. In fact, it often leads to being taken for granted. When you constantly prioritize others over yourself, people start to assume that it is your job to make their lives easier. They stop appreciating your efforts because they see them as expected rather than as acts of generosity. You become the person they turn to when they need something, but they are nowhere to be found when you need support. Niceness is often mistaken for kindness, but the difference lies in intention. Niceness is about external validation, while kindness is about internal strength. A person who is truly kind does not allow themselves to be used or manipulated. They do not stay silent when something feels wrong. They do not compromise their values just to fit in. They know that their worth is not determined by how much they can do for others, but by how well they honor themselves. The world does not need more nice people who live in the shadows of others. It needs people who are kind, strong, and unafraid to be themselves. From a young age, we are taught to be agreeable, to conform, and to avoid making others uncomfortable. Society conditions us to believe that saying yes is the polite thing to do, that disagreeing is rude, and that our worth is measured by how well we fit into the expectations of others. As a result, many people go through life suppressing their true thoughts, emotions, and desires just to maintain harmony in relationships, workplaces, and social circles. They smile when they want to frown, agree when they want to object, and stay silent when their heart is urging them to speak. Pleasing others becomes a habit, an automatic response ingrained so deeply that they stop questioning it. They say yes even when they are exhausted, even when it goes against their own interests, because they are afraid of disappointing others. They fear rejection, judgment, or being seen as difficult. They believe that if they just keep accommodating everyone, they will be loved and appreciated. But in doing so, they lose sight of their own needs. They bury their opinions, their boundaries, and sometimes even their dreams under the weight of obligation. There is a difference between compromise and self sacrifice. Compromise is healthy, it allows relationships to thrive and fosters understanding. But when someone repeatedly sacrifices their own truth just to keep the peace, it creates an internal conflict that cannot be ignored. They begin to feel invisible, unheard, and unfulfilled. Over time, resentment builds. They wonder why no one seems to consider their feelings, why they are always the ones adjusting, bending, and making space for others, while no one does the same for them. What they fail to realize is that people will only treat them the way they allow themselves to be treated. When they constantly suppress their truth to make others comfortable, they teach people that their needs do not matter. They become the person who always says yes, the one who never complains, the one who is always available. And because they never voice their discomfort, others assume they are fine. They do not question the imbalance because they have never been shown otherwise. Speaking one's truth does not mean being rude, selfish, or disrespectful. It means honoring one's own voice, setting boundaries, and choosing authenticity over approval. It means understanding that not everyone will agree, and that's okay. It means realizing that disappointing others is not the worst thing in the world, but losing oneself in the process is. The fear of rejection should never be greater than the need for self-respect. The discomfort of speaking up is temporary, but the regret of staying silent lasts much longer. There is power in choosing oneself. There is strength in saying no without guilt. There is freedom in standing firm in one's beliefs, even if it means standing alone. Many people go through life believing that being nice is a virtue, something that will earn them love, respect, and acceptance. They think that by always being agreeable, never causing discomfort, and putting others first, they will create stronger relationships and be seen as good people. But what they don't realize is that when being nice comes at the cost of self-respect, it stops being a virtue and starts becoming a burden. It turns into a habit of self-betrayal, where a person continuously sacrifices their own needs, emotions, and boundaries just to maintain the illusion of peace. When a person prioritizes being nice over standing up for themselves, they invite situations where they are overlooked, dismissed, or taken advantage of. They allow others to dictate their decisions, shape their opinions, and determine their worth. They say yes when they should say no, they tolerate what should be unacceptable, and they remain silent in moments when they should speak up. They mistake their silence for strength, their compliance for kindness, and their self-neglect for selflessness. But in reality, all they are doing is teaching the world that their voice does not matter. When people get used to someone always being available, never complaining, and always adjusting to accommodate them, they stop appreciating their efforts. They assume that this person exists to serve, to listen, and to follow along without question. The more someone prioritizes pleasing others over respecting themselves, the more they become invisible in their own life. They become someone who is easy to dismiss, easy to manipulate, and easy to ignore because they have never set the standard for how they should be treated. The cost of this behavior is high. It leads to exhaustion, frustration, and deep-seated resentment. A person who constantly compromises their own well-being for others may find themselves feeling drained, unfulfilled, and unheard. They may wonder why people don't value them as much as they value others. They may struggle with the realization that no matter how much they give, it is never enough. And the hardest truth of all is that they have played a role in this cycle by failing to demand the respect they deserve. Being nice should never come at the expense of self-respect. It is possible to be kind without allowing oneself to be mistreated. It is possible to be compassionate while still having firm boundaries. It is possible to be a good person without saying yes to everything and everyone. The key is understanding that true respect comes from authenticity, not from bending over backward to please others. Kindness is often misunderstood Many people believe that to be kind, they must always be agreeable, avoid confrontation, and put others' needs before their own. They assume that kindness means accepting everything without question, always saying yes and never asserting themselves. But true kindness is not about being passive or allowing others to take advantage of you. It is not about pleasing everyone at the cost of your own well being. Kindness is not weakness, it is strength. It takes strength to set boundaries, to say no when necessary, and to stand up for yourself while still treating others with respect. A truly kind person understands that their worth is not determined by how much they can tolerate. They do not let people walk all over them in the name of kindness. They do not mistake patience for allowing mistreatment. They know that being kind does not mean being a pushover. It does not mean staying silent when something is unfair or pretending to be okay when they are not. Kindness requires courage. It requires the ability to speak one's truth without fear, to protect one's peace without guilt, and to walk away from people or situations that no longer serve them. There is a difference between being kind and being overly accommodating. When someone prioritizes pleasing others over being honest with themselves, they create an environment where their needs and feelings are always secondary. They train people to believe that their comfort matters more than their own. They become the person who is always available, always willing to adjust, and always saying the right things, even if those things go against what they truly feel. This kind of behavior is often mistaken for kindness, but in reality, it stems from fear, the fear of rejection, of disappointing others, of not being liked. People who are genuinely kind do not allow their kindness to be taken for granted. They do not believe that being a good person means saying yes to everything. They do not carry the burden of making everyone happy at their own expense. They understand that kindness is about treating others with respect, but it is also about treating themselves with that same respect. They know that their value does not decrease when they set boundaries, and they do not feel guilty for protecting their energy. It takes inner strength to recognize the difference between kindness and submission. It takes wisdom to understand that kindness is a choice, not an obligation. It takes confidence to say, I can be kind and still put myself first when needed. True kindness does not ask you to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. It does not require you to compromise your self-respect. It does not mean sacrificing your happiness to maintain an illusion of peace. The world does not need more people who are nice at the cost of their own well-being. It needs people who are kind, strong, and unafraid to stand in their truth. From a young age, people are taught to seek approval. They are told to be polite, to follow the rules, and to make sure they do not disappoint others. Society rewards those who fit in, who don't challenge the status quo, and who make others feel comfortable. Over time, this conditioning leads people to believe that their worth is tied to how much they are liked by others. They become afraid of being judged, afraid of being misunderstood, and afraid of standing out. As a result, they begin to shape their lives around the expectations of others, constantly seeking validation and approval. The need to be liked can become a cage. It forces people to suppress their true thoughts and feelings to avoid conflict. They say what others want to hear instead of what they truly believe. They agree to things they do not want to do just to maintain harmony. They apologize for things that are not their fault. They tolerate behavior that makes them uncomfortable because they do not want to be seen as difficult. In the process, they lose sight of who they really are. They become more focused on how others perceive them than on how they feel about themselves. No matter how hard someone tries, they will never be able to please everyone. There will always be people who disagree, who criticize, and who do not approve. Trying to mold oneself into what others expect is an exhausting and endless pursuit. The opinions of others are constantly changing, and basing self-worth on something so unstable leads to a life of insecurity and self-doubt. The truth is that no matter how kind, generous, or thoughtful a person is, there will always be someone who finds fault. There will always be people who misunderstand, judge, or simply do not connect. That is part of life, and it is not a reflection of personal failure. Letting go of the need to be liked is not about being unkind or uncaring. It is about prioritizing self respect over external validation. It is about recognizing that self worth should come from within, not from the approval of others. People who stand firm in their truth, who embrace their uniqueness, and who are not afraid to be themselves often attract genuine connections. The right people will appreciate them for who they truly are, not for who they pretend to be. Confidence comes from authenticity. It comes from knowing that self worth is not determined by how many people like or approve of you. It comes from the realization that inner peace is far more valuable than constant validation. People who are true to themselves, who speak their minds, and who live according to their own values may not be liked by everyone, but they will be respected. They will experience a freedom that comes only from no longer living under the weight of other people's expectations. When someone stops trying to be liked by everyone, they begin to live for themselves. For too long, people have been told to be nice, to be agreeable, and to never upset others. They have been conditioned to believe that being accepted is more important than being real. They have been taught to smile even when they are hurting, to say yes even when they want to say no, and to put others' needs before their own at all costs. Over time, this conditioning forces them into a pattern of behavior where they become more concerned with how they are perceived than with who they truly are. They lose their voice, their identity, and their sense of self-worth because they have been taught that being liked is more valuable than being authentic. Authenticity requires courage. It is not always easy to show up as the truest version of oneself. It means being vulnerable, speaking one's truth, and standing firm in one's beliefs even when others disagree. It means accepting that not everyone will understand or approve and being okay with that. It requires letting go of the fear of judgment and embracing the reality that true confidence comes from within. People who live authentically do not seek validation from others because they know that their worth is not determined by external approval. There is a difference between kindness and self-sacrifice. Being kind does not mean allowing oneself to be treated unfairly. It does not mean accepting less than one deserves or constantly putting others before oneself. True kindness begins with self-respect. A person who values themselves, sets boundaries, speaks up when necessary, and does not compromise their happiness for the sake of pleasing others. They do not allow fear to dictate their actions or silence their voice. They understand that being true to themselves is the greatest act of self-love. People often fear that if they stop being nice, they will be seen as rude or selfish. But there is a difference between being nice and being real. Being nice is often performative. It is about doing what is expected rather than what is right. Being real is about living with integrity, about making choices that align with one's values and beliefs. It is about showing up honestly in every aspect of life, whether in relationships, work, or personal growth. People who embrace authenticity attract meaningful connections because they do not pretend to be something they are not. They do not waste energy trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for them. Living authentically allows people to experience true freedom. It frees them from the burden of constantly seeking approval, from the exhaustion of pretending, and from the regret of not standing up for themselves. It gives them the power to make decisions that serve their well-being rather than the expectations of others. It allows them to build a life based on their own terms, filled with people who appreciate them for who they truly are. When a person stops being nice at the cost of their identity, they gain something far greater: the ability to live without fear, without compromise, and without regret.